It all started when I added a nice new piece to my collection. I like to frequent interesting shops when I travel, and I always end up bringing something home for my son. My latest gem was an old monkey plush. It looked old, but it had its charm. Plastered on its face was the widest grin you'd ever seen on a soft face. His eyes were welcoming. Great condition for how old it seemed. Nearly every day I'd buy something for him and give a loud greeting when I came home. Every time I brought something home though, it was always bittersweet. My first impression is that I want nothing more than to show Tom whatever I've found. It always put a smile on my face showing him something unique, and it definitely stimulated his young curiosity. Regrettably, he passed away 3 years ago, but my habit still continued. Maybe it's from a lack of moving on, or an old habit dying hard, but I've continued to call out to him when I got home, and pile up intricate items in the house without fail after he passed. It still hurts. I've always heard the general expression about how painful it is for a parent to outlive their child, but you never fully know the impact until you're living it yourself. The monkey plush I found actually signified the 3rd anniversary of his passing, leaving the shopkeeper seemingly confused as to why I looked so dismayed with the purchase. What drew me to the plush was how welcoming the smile was, something I hadn't truly experienced in a long time. It's hard to move on when you see things like that. Just when I'm about to reach a form of peace, something triggers all the memories and drags me back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. A very inefficient way to move. In some ways, I'm scared to move on. Scared that if I do, I'll forget what life was like with him. By continuing with this unhealthy cycle, I'm almost forced to remember both the bad and the good. The bad I'm referring to must have taken a toll on me, because it wasn't long after the 3rd year mark that it all started to catch up with me. My house was a state. 3 years of constantly buying things, plus the items accumulated over the years he was alive, really added up. To get in the house, it felt like I had to push a little bit harder each time to move whatever was in the way. The kitchen was no longer usable due to the build-up of the quirky cooking utensils and novelty cups and plates. There was just enough room to shower and use the toilet, but otherwise the bathroom was barely navigatable. The worst offender was my bedroom, filled with many trinkets and souvenirs from my longer travels. The only room not to be bit by the hoarding bug was my son's room. I kept that closed and preserved, not touched since the day he passed. I could see, even then, that my collecting would ruin the house. But not his room, I told myself. Never his room. My routine of shoving past various piles started getting interrupted by rather strange occurrences. I'd knock over a pile of cans, and from the noise, something would scuttle away in the corner of my vision, like that of a cat startled by a loud noise. Another time, I was watching TV in the dark. I looked away from the screen for a second to rest my eyes. The moment I did, I swear a dark spot that had been there since the TV was on felt like it moved. And suddenly, the room felt lighter, emptier. The worst was late one night. I had a bit too much to drink and broke the seal. I thought I was ready for bed, but just as I was dozing off, I had a strong need to pee. I stumbled out of my room in the dark and turned to the hallway where the bathroom was. And I swear, no lie, I saw a figure. Just a silhouette, but still a figure, standing at the end. When I turned to fully face and confirm my sight, it was gone. Needless to say, I no longer needed to go to the bathroom. I feel it's easy to pin some of the strange occurrences on rodents, a family of possums maybe. But what I saw that night told me a completely different story. I needed to move on. Maybe it was Tom, seeing me in my ruined state, telling me it's time to let go. Maybe it was an angel. Either way, the divine message was clear. A time of change was coming. And boy, did things change. It was laborious. I booked a week off work, but ended up having to book an extra week, all to categorize and box everything. Some boxes were filled with heaps of fridge magnets, an easy thing to get while on the road. Other items were more specialist, such as handcrafted wooden statues of animals which I'd gotten in Africa. The whole task wasn't easy, both physically and mentally. Some special items made me pause, hold them, and remember that no matter how special an item was, he never saw it when I brought it home. A painful aftersting in an already painful habit I'd kept up. I hired a truck and piled everything in. I knew where I wanted them to go. Many charities take bric-a-brac and various items as donations to sell on in their stores. And specifically, I wanted to donate to cancer charities. Hopefully the money raised would help prevent another father to end up like me. I tried dropping it at the store, but there was so much that they gave me the address to the facility, which they themselves sent donations to be sorted. They were hesitant to give me this extra step, but I wholeheartedly offered to do it. I knew this was the best course of action. I needed to be free. The drive took an hour both ways. The whole drive there, I was tense, feeling a looming presence behind me, a pressure of the weight of my actions. I knew if I just rushed there, I could get this over with. But I hit constant red lights. My luck was awful because it felt like nearly every light was either red or just changing as I hit them, forcing me to be stationary, giving me nothing but time to think and reflect. The rumble of the engine was no respite to my personal demons constantly whispering to me to turn back, to just give up, to not change. Mounting pressure from over my shoulder so palpable, I swear I could hear it rasping in my ear. Never visible, never seen, only the chilling feeling making itself known. These feelings never left until I was at my destination, helping unload the boxes. Each box moved felt like a small weight on my shoulders being lifted. At the end, I rolled my shoulders, expecting the stiff tension of hard work. But surprisingly, they felt fresh. For the first time as long as I could remember, they felt free. The drive back was light. As opposed to the journey there, it almost seemed like luck was on my side. The lights were hitting green. The truck zoomed up hills without all the added weight, adding to my feeling of lightness. I truly felt at ease. To accommodate this high, I stopped at a nice-looking cafe to treat myself. A bit of cake and some coffee. The cake felt so soft and sweet, and it complemented the perfectly bitter sensation of the coffee, truly adding to the high of my release. My life was now mine to live, at least for the moment. I gave the truck back to the rental company and drove home, ready to start again. There was a lot to salvage. My job, although not the most fun, was well paying. I was still young enough to hit the dating scene, though I'd need to start slow. My house was sizable. The only downside of the clutter was now gone. All it needed was some decorating, and it was ready to be a home again. That last thought hit me harder than expected. Home, a word I hadn't used for the place I'd lived in for a very long time. With glee on my face and a pep in my step, I hopped out the car and made the walk up to my house. I turned the key and pushed the door open to no resistance at all. My mouth was now a joyous grin. The door opened, and my heart sank. It was empty. I got so wrapped up on the activity that what I had done hadn't sunk in until I saw it. When I circled the house, I didn't feel like I was walking, more so like I was floating. There was nothing in my way besides the walls and doors. My arms no longer brushed against the stack of comics on my way to the kitchen. My foot no longer caught on the weird pop drinks that were themed on an anime I knew he liked on the way to the living room. The strange aroma of the exotic incense sticks I bought him from India no longer hit me on the way to the bathroom. It was all gone. My eyes were agape. I felt like I hadn't blinked in minutes. My breathing picked up, and soon I was hyperventilating. My heart started racing until I could physically feel it without having to put my hand to my chest. I had the most serious panic attack of my life. This feeling of loss, it felt like he had died all over again. It was a shock to my system, too much to take in. A primal part of me wanted to speed over to the facility and grab every last box until things were back to normal. A thought stopped me. I had a flash to why I did this in the first place. To move on. Though I'd never anticipated the impact, I knew it would hurt. I gave myself a week to adjust to this new house, this fresh house. Not to start again with the hoarding, but to start fresh as a new life. Each day should get easier, starting with the worst, day 1, to the release, day 7. I was wrong. The day after, I woke up, ready for work. Tired, I instinctively tried to dodge the things that weren't there. After fully waking up and taking in my surroundings, everything hit me again. The shock, the pain, the loss. I composed myself steadily and left for work. While at work, I seemed more at ease, a literal out of sight, out of mind. I typed away at my computer and worked the day away. I was almost satisfied until I looked at the clock and knew it was soon time to return home. The dread filled me. I wished I could never return home, but part of me was screaming at me for even thinking of the idea of not saying hello to my son. I had a resolve that if I wasn't going to clutter the house, I could still keep up with a greeting, as a way to cope. I came home and I looked up the hallway to his room, ready to call out. But the words stopped in my throat. My jaw quivered as the words sounded in my head, but nothing came out my mouth. I looked down at my hands, which were now shaking, and saw the problem. They were empty. I felt like I had failed him. I clenched my fist and composed myself. I stormed out and rented out a van on the basis that it was an emergency. When I arrived at the facility where I donated the boxes, they remembered me. It took convincing, but I spun them a tale about why I needed as many back as possible. Something they didn't normally do, but they also don't receive several houses worth of boxes in one go either, so they made an exception. The problem is, I didn't get all the boxes, so I took note of where they said they'd sent various processed boxes and took to visiting the stores the next day. The whole day after was spent travelling the country, visiting each store on my list. I had no hope of convincing them to give me the items back, since the whole situation sounded like a tall tale, and explaining everything would take a very long time before they'd even consider the notion of giving away a large portion of stock. So, I bought whatever I recognized. Each shop I visited, I'd instantly recognize what was mine. Years of running through the process of introducing each piece to my deceased son catalogued them in my head. There were some items that were lost to sales from before I'd arrived, something I'd anticipated, but subdued with the gratification of recouping what I could. The day breezed by until it was nearly closing time, and I was at the last shop. This shop was different, as it only contained one of my items, compared to the others which seemed to have a box or two's worth. It was in a bin of other similar items. I'd almost missed it, but saw a wide eye glaring at me from within the pile. I pulled it out, and was met with a wide grin and welcoming eyes. It was the monkey. I took it to the till and paid for it. The cashier commented how cute it was, and I reflexively replied it was for my son. A comment which people are usually happy when saying. The way home, my mind felt clouded. A dark storm of confusion and regret swirling in my head, almost distracting me into a few accidents on the road. So much progress made, now lost to impulse. At home, I unloaded all the boxes I'd accumulated. Exhausted, I sat on a sturdy set of boxes and stared at the monkey, reflecting on what I'd just done. The resources spent, the time lost, all to go back to square one. My mind was hazy. The monkey's grin, a stark contrast to the mood of the room. Its eyes coldly staring at me, a judgment of my regression. In frustration, I squeezed the plush until my knuckles went white, venting out my anger verbally. I loosened my grip and let the monkey bounce off the floor, and noticed something white. I picked the monkey back up, its eyes now bulging from its head, it still glaring at me. Between its eyes was a bit of white. The seams on its face now a bit open. At first, I thought it was stuffing, but noticed it was a bit too straight and angular to be cotton. I pinched it, and it crinkled. Confused, I slowly pulled it out, careful not to make the tear any more wider. What I held after was a note. I furrowed my brow, confused on how it had gotten there, mulling over the idea of whether it was there before I'd bought it or after I'd donated it. I unfolded it and slowly read out its contents. If you yourself cannot release, then it will come to take a piece. Suddenly, the smile the monkey wore seemed a bit more sinister than before. A paranoia brought on by the vaguely threatening note I seemed to have pulled from a kid's toy. Right then, I no longer felt alone. I sensed the familiar presence from before, but I no longer suspected it was my son. That night, I didn't get much sleep. At work, I was not feeling any energy. Several coffees only seemed to subvert a few symptoms of exhaustion, but not get rid of it. Typing mid-sentence, I lowered my head, and I was soon out cold on my keyboard. When I woke, the office was empty. Great, no one noticed I fell asleep, I thought. Only a few lights were on, a courtesy to deter burglars. I scurried up my things and hazily made my way to the exit. A loud and sudden sound jarred me from this hazy mindset, and suddenly I was more alert than I'd ever been. I wasn't alone. My mind instantly went on a spree of thoughts to calm me down. Maybe there were night staff, people working overtime to hit deadlines. Not unheard of. Maybe it was security. Possibly. Maybe it was the building settling. A bit far-fetched, but not impossible. After running through various scenarios, I soon felt confident to start moving again. Quieter this time. I told myself I was moving quietly to not disturb anyone else in the building. But that was just to make myself feel better for being so scared. Turning various corners at a hurried but quiet speed, I was soon stopped dead in my tracks. In front of me was a person. My eyes were met with a figure in a black suit and white shirt, a common attire for the guys at the office. My shock fell to ease, but not for long, as I soon realized that I was staring at his chest, at eye level. My eyes widened at how unnatural that registered to me. The sound of my jagged breath was the only noise I heard as my head shook, my mind telling me to look up, but my instincts pulling my head down. Shakily, my eyes worked its way up the figure until I was met face to face with this monster. I wish I could say eye to eye, as that was where I was trying to stare, but its lack of eyes just made it sink in how much trouble I was in. The only human-resembling feature my eyes could catch was the mouth, formed in a wide, happy grin, though I could tell it was happy for all the wrong reasons. The grin was so forced that it sat in twisted disproportions compared to the size of its head. The only movement I saw was the slight twisting of its head before it pounced in a blink of my eyes. I jumped back with a gasp and looked around. The screen in front of me read a garbled mess, seemingly from twisting and turning in my sleep on top of the keyboard. A few cohesive words stood out, like release and take. Monkeys with a typewriter, I thought. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes and worked that motion into running my hands down my face in a pacifying manner. When I looked down, I noticed smears of red. I wiped under my nose and realized it was bleeding. It didn't take much convincing to the manager to let me take the rest of the day off. I looked as bad as I felt, and I felt awful. When I got home, I was welcomed by silence. A once normal sensation, now an eerie trigger for panic. The nightmare had gotten to me. My stress was catching up. My grief was causing harm. My stubborn habits becoming the end of me. I pulled out a paperclip I haphazardly twisted into an S. Superman was his favourite superhero. In my rushed state, I didn't go to a shop on the way home, so this poor excuse of a gift was the best I could do. I called out to greet my son while I added the item to a small pile I'd already made from one of the boxes. Not expecting an answer back, I froze and I heard something echo back. It was a clicking sound. It didn't sound mechanical or anything from a man-made object. It sounded vocal, primal. My breathing slowed to long, silent motions, my whole body trying its best to not make any extra noise while I listened intently. My hand moved from the paperclip to something larger and hard. A lamp. I slowly picked it up and crept around the house, ready for anything. I peered in the living room. Nothing. The bathroom was clear too. I searched every room except his, Tom's room. I was anxious, not only from fear, but a hesitation from respect, touching a room I only entered on special occasions. I slowly twisted the knob and pushed the door open as fast as I could, and jumped in fright. Eye level, on top of the dresser in front of the door, was the wide smile of the monkey, sat neatly facing the doorway. This didn't put me at ease, with a new question swarming my mind. How did it get there? I picked it up to take this tainted item out of my son's sacred room. Underneath where it sat was the note from before. If you yourself cannot release, then it will come to take a piece. The same note from before, but now I decided to take it more seriously. I still haven't fully worked out its true meaning, but I feel like I've scratched the surface. I figured out that this whole ordeal was brought about my refusing to let go of my son. It isn't fair. Should I be punished for loving my son too much? There is no arguing, however. No matter how I justify it, the demon won't go away. I know how to survive. Everything seemed to clear up once I gave away the boxes. Even as I'm documenting everything, I stare at them, knowing that I can live if I wanted to. But I don't want to. I can't picture a life without my son. I couldn't 3 years ago, and I still can't now. It's something I'd rather die not knowing. My only option is to deflect. I see the monster, the one from my dream. It stares at me from behind a window, hand on the glass, a small crack forming, its mouth open to an impossible angle, welcoming plastic eyes poking out of its hollow throat, a reminder of my final gift. It's taunting me. If I can't move on, maybe I can push him onto someone else. That is my only hope to continue my wretched life. But who knows? Maybe he'll get to me before moving on to someone else. My future is not certain, so neither is my intention. So this can serve as whatever you want it to be. A horror story designed to play on your emotions, a warning to those who won't let go, or maybe a curse to those you send it to. This story was inspired by Crypt TV's monster Luxie. If you want to see this monster in live action for yourself, click on the annotation to check out the first season on their channel. And also, make sure to subscribe to catch season 2 when that's out, something I'm excited for myself.